Okay, we'd like to reconvene to the regular meeting at 6:02. And closed session report number 5. Conference with legal counsel, education AL-2324-1 direction given. And we will now move on to the patriotic exercise. Who would like to do it? Why don't we stand up? Oh, you did, Richard, please. I didn't put that.
My name is Richard. I'm in the 37th grade. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands nation under God, this
You want to pick All right, and roll call. Trustee DeBouvet.
I'm here.
I'm kind of going on. James. Yeah. Well, here.
Here.
And moving on to approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
And approval of the minutes from June 13th and June 16th, 2023. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from June 13th?
Minutes have already been correction. I motion to approve the minutes from June 13th.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Are there any public statements related to agenda items this evening?
There is one public statement for non-agenda item, so that will be read at the end of it. None for agenda items.
Okay, statement of Dr. Marla Silversmith, Superintendent.
Good evening. It's nice to see everyone and thank you for being here tonight and welcome back. We are rounding out August is a busy month. In July, we go to what we call a closed month, which means that we don't get to see our board members as actively. So it's nice to see everyone. But it doesn't mean that we close or we stop being busy. We are open and we welcome families because our sites are closed. So we've been busy registering people and keeping everything going. We've had a lot of visitors, a lot of enrollment, which has been wonderful. The expansion of the TK dates means that we have been enrolling a lot of TK students, which has been a lot of fun. I'm excited to welcome to the dais Dr. Wesley Tang as our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, which has been amazing. And you'll notice the open seat, which is our Chief Business Official. So our Chief Business Official, the posting is closed. We are doing paper screening and then we'll look to see about interviewing. We do have an interim Chief Business Official who is Luce Hatteras, and she's not with us tonight, but she will start attending meetings at our September meeting, but she has been working in the office and supporting us, and we're excited to have her onboarded too. So that's been great. So going forward, it's been busy. Last week, we celebrated the end of summer with our district office and celebrated everybody that had been helping. And then today we had 19 of our staff, 18 district administrators for a full day retreat, talking about all of our goals and onboarding for the year. And then, and we also had our school resource officer come over and spend some time with us, Heather Rumbach, who is wonderful. And we really talked about who we are and where we've come from as a district over the years, and that we're better together and that we can always be better tomorrow. And that we're also going to think again and kind of rediscover who we are going forward. We are reading Think Again by Adam Grant. It's our book for the year. So we will be reading chapters as a leadership team and really talking about what we want for a profile of an 8th grade student for each student in Burlingame. So over the course of this year, starting in September, you will see grade levels present, starting with TK, and we will go by grade level at every board meeting through 8th grade, and they will be talking about academic, social, emotional, and behavioral goals by grade level with teachers, classified, and administrative staff, and really developing what our expectation is for each student when they leave here. So we're excited to share that with our community and our board as we revamp kind of our expectations and rethink what we're doing. So you'll hear a lot about thinking again and rethinking, and we have books for the board to read along with us and really look at it. So all of our work will be around equity and looking at each student as we make our fiscal and human resources discussions, and think again about our expectations of each student as they enter into 9th grade and thinking about college and career readiness. So very excited as we move forward. So it's been busy, but we're looking forward to what's to come. Thank you.
Yep. All right, statement of the board members. I'm going to go in a different direction. You, Trustee Brown, would you like to begin?
Sure. I don't have much to say this evening, other than I'm excited about the new school year and to have Wesley joining us and the all the initiatives that Marla outlined. So I did enjoy the closed month. Not thinking about school board for the month of July, I'll admit that, but very excited to be back. Looking forward to the year.
Trustee Brown?
Pretty much the same. I have nothing really to report. It's been off, but happy to be back in our meetings again and taking everyone for a great school year.
Equally excited for a new school year, my first as a trustee, so looking forward to that. I did just want to take a quick moment to say thanks to Rich, who walked Wes and I through the 6 different elementary schools, as well as BIS about a week or so ago, just to see all the progress and work that's been done. So, thanks for that.
Trustee Dwight?
I just wanted to thank Richard and Omar and everyone in the facilities department for everything they did this summer, because they're under tight restrictions to get a lot of work done in a short amount of time before the first day of school. And I wanted to welcome Wes to his first meeting, Sarah to her first meeting in the board office. And then I also wanted to congratulate Marla, who on July 1st became our permanent superintendent. So thank you all.
I would just echo all of that, and in addition, appreciate that our teachers and staff have also been doing a lot of professional development during their summer break, and thanks to all of those who put that together for them, and thanks to our teachers and staff for participating in that on behalf of our students. All right, we are moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a way to consolidate many items considered by the board to be routine business. These items often require approval, but do not need a discussion. All trustees have reviewed the items in advance of the board meeting. Members of the board, staff, or public are able to request specific items to be discussed and removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent items. Movement of any suggested consent item is appropriate at this time. Does anyone have anything that they would like to comment or remove from tonight's agenda? Well, I do. I don't think it needs to be removed, but I would just like to ask a clarifying question before we move on with the motion. My question is for you, Dr. Silversmith. We know from our May meeting, post-teacher presentation, that our teachers would like to examine the BIS schedule and consider larger blocks of time for science, math, and a reevaluation of how Trojan time is is used. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, and if you could just clarify a little bit, maybe that aligns with what you said in your opening statement about the portrait of an 8th grade child. If you
Absolutely. That will be a component of what we look at throughout the 6th through 8th grade. Portrait of a profile that an 8th grade student will be towards the end of the year. And as we build instructional minutes and look at that profile, we will be looking at the specifically science labs and the time that they have and the allotted amount of instructional minutes per periods. Based on the feedback we received in May and throughout from teachers, and then teachers that had emailed both the physical department and the ed services department. Part of looking at bell schedules next year will be eliciting not only teacher voice, but also student voice to be able to support making sure that students are getting enough instructional minutes to meet what our expectations are for each student to be able to lead. And part of that is making sure that every student has opportunities and that we're making sure we're meeting and not having students leave with opportunity gaps. So that our most vulnerable students are getting access to things that might not receive access to them outside of the school day.
Could I ask just one, as long as we're talking about this,
Yes, please.
could you just highlight any significant changes from last year? Because I'm looking at it with my daughter, we didn't identify really big changes, but is there anything that's new this year?
That's correct. So when the teachers came in May, there was a thought of maybe changing it this year. And what we did, the CBO Bonnevert and myself did, we had a conversation about not changing it with onboarding a brand new principal and at the end of the year. So instead reverting back to what had been status quo for the 22-23 year, allowing principal Lands to have a conversation, go in depth with teachers and students this year to really evaluate what would be best practice going forward for the 24-25 year instead of changing it.
Thank you.
So you are correct, Steve Brown.
Are there any other questions? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I'll motion to approve today's consent agenda.
There is a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item 14, education. 14A, equity and diversity resolution 2023-24-2. This is a
Good evening, everyone. This is working for the trustee, Smith. We bring forward the equity diversity resolution to us this evening because this is an important resolution, as we know that we have been engaging in the equity work that I have learned for several years. And this is the core belief that we stand on and stand by in terms of supporting our kids and providing equitable access and equitable resources for our students. And this is something that we will continue to look into deeply to identify what are the opportunity gaps that we might have in our district and how we can better support all students, especially students who are vulnerable, in our school district community. So that said, I would like to invite any one of our trustees to read out loud the resolution so that we can move forward to approve the resolution.
thank you. I think Doug will be reading.
Yeah. This is equity and diversity resolution 2023-2024-2. Whereas the strength and richness of our community is in its diversity, the Board of Trustees affirms its commitment to continuing the district's systematic efforts to build a society free of hatred, bigotry, and racism. Whereas equity and equality are not interchangeable terms. The concept of educational equity goes beyond formal equality, where all students are treated the same, to fostering a barrier-free environment where all students, regardless of background, have the opportunity to benefit equally. We believe that equity must be measured by access and outcomes. Whereas Burlingame School District Board Policy 0410 outlines our commitment to non-discrimination based on gender, sex, race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, ethnic group identification, marital or parental status, physical or mental disability, sexual orientation, or the perception of one or more of such characteristics. While this policy addresses intentional inequities, we will not ignore the unintentional creation of inequity. We recognize there are historic and ongoing societal causes of inequity, which we are firmly committed to the success and well-being of all Burlingame children. Whereas our district data show that not all students are achieving at their full potential, we assert that addressing disparities in educational access and opportunity are the responsibility of every adult in the Burlingame School District and not the responsibility of our children. Inequality and outcomes will be addressed through implementation of systematic structures to support all students within our system. Now, therefore, be it resolved with these commitments in mind, the school board of the Burlingame School District expects that every student will be provided with equitable access to high quality and culturally relevant instruction, curriculum, support, facilities, and other educational resources, even when this means differentiating resources to accomplish this goal. Multiple pathways to success will be created in order to meet the needs of each of our students and shall actively encourage, support, and expect high academic achievement from all students uniformly. Practices and policies that lead to both the overrepresentation of students from some ethnic groups and students of low socioeconomic status in areas such as special education and the underrepresentation in programs will be critically examined and modified. All staff and students will be provided with the opportunity and education needed to understand identity with regards to gender, ethnicity, parental status, ability, religion, or sexual orientation, and the connection between identity and the disparate impacts of both contemporary and historical practices in education and society as a whole on our students.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve? Would anyone like to second? All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item 14B, school plan for student achievement. We just,
we did, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's yep. 14B, school plan for student achievement plans for the schools identified for additional targeted support and improvement, ATSI first and final read.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nate Wong, the coordinator of assessments and special projects. So today I just wanted to we needed board approval for these amendments to the school plan for student achievement. Because these three schools were identified for additional targeted support and improvement. So the three schools have submitted their amendments, and I was just going to go over a few of the main points in each one before it goes for a vote. So Lincoln was identified for chronic absenteeism for their socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So one of their one of the identified inequities for them was that the number of students identified as very high for chronic absenteeism on the California school dashboard more than doubled in the previous year, from 5 to 11. So some strategies for addressing this would be offering long-term independent study for students who we know are going to be out for an extended period of time. Offering easily accessible information about health clinics, and early family engagement with our new TK and tutor students through setting up buddy families, and continuing to do that throughout the school year as new students come into the school. Holding belonging events to increase school climate, and the use of our two social emotional learning curricula, which are Kimochis and Second Step. In addition, the use of small group instruction for both ELA and math, or English language arts and math, as well as one-to-one counseling. So one of the main goals here is growth in the areas of math and English language arts. And the plan is to monitor student progress during their weekly staff meetings. So that's Lincoln. Any questions about it? Okay. Moving on to McKinley, they were identified for their students with disabilities also being chronically absent on the school dashboard. So one of the identified inequities was mainly based around staffing shortages, both in the 2021 and 22, as well as 22 and 23 school years. So in 2021 and 22, there was no consistent counseling. And in the 22-23 school year, we did not have a permanent RSP or credentialed permanent RSP teacher until March of 2023. So both were resolved. Within that school year, a counselor was hired at the beginning of the 22-23 school year. So some of the strategies to support students would be having special ed teachers collaborate with their gen ed counterparts to design small group supports, using visible tools and manipulatives, as well as exit tickets to monitor understanding, and having students collaborate with each other. Additionally, setting up buddy classes to help build social and emotional learning support and experience. And again, using the second step in promotion social emotional learning curricula on a daily basis. Okay, so that's any questions about
What's an exit ticket?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's so say I'm teaching a lesson, right? And I want to just do a quick check for understanding. And I want the kids to just, do something really easy. So it could be like, you could put one question on the board and say, answer this question on a piece of paper and turn it into the report on your way out or something like that. So, and then you can collect those and you just check to see, did they understand what was going on during the lesson. Yeah, any other questions? Okay. So moving on to Roosevelt. So they were identified for, again, for chronic absenteeism, but for students with disabilities and Latinx students. So some of the identified inequities are that 21.1% of their student population is eligible for Title I, which means that they're eligible for free and reduced lunches. There are 21 languages spoken at the school. And in addition, there's been a disproportional decline in family participation at school-wide events, such as the Chili Cook-Off, which is their fundraiser, as well as PTA meetings, site council, and board meetings like that. And in addition, there's also been a disproportional decline in task scores. So task is our state testing, and that includes math, English language arts, as well as survey grades. There's also been a disproportional decline in attendance for both student groups. So some ideas for support would be outreach, outreach and extra family support, translated into multiple languages spoken at the school. And in particular, trying to have students come for support both before and after school, which would include small group and one-on-one instruction. So really the idea is to increase communication and increase family knowledge of the programs offered at the school. So another thing would be having built-in planning time for teachers, which they call their professional learning community, or PLC for short, and they have that on a weekly basis. One thing about Roosevelt is that they get out a little bit later every day, except for Tuesday, where they get out at 1. So they have extra planning time for their teachers on that particular day. They have the same amount of instructional minutes as the other schools, but it's just mapped out to them. So they're able to have that built in. So having RTI for targeted interventions. RTI is responsive intervention, so that's our tier 2. So that's that would be a pull out or typically pull out or push in teacher going in to support students when needed. As well as using teacher created after school interventions, as well as translating info for all meetings and the use of technology for instance, podcasting, and translating information into different languages again. And a side note, an intervention support staff member was hired in January to help with outreach and after school support. In addition, community outreach events for parents to connect to resources. And again, just honing in on small group and one-on-one instruction during and after school. I think that's what I have questions about.
More broad comment overall. Just, I think just given the, we're 2 years, 1 year out post pandemic at this point, and I think for the last couple of years we've all been trained with the child and coughing or sneezing, and you keep them home. And I wonder if people will be pre-pandemic, you send your child to school with a cold. So I wonder now that we're getting back into a normal environment, if people will be more inclined to send their children to school with a minor cold. And that might just organically change our chronic absenteeism.
Yeah, that very well might be. I think there was, even last year, there was still a lot of fear surrounding, public gatherings and things like that. So, as that may dissipate, maybe right, and that's something that's the kind of data we'll be monitoring throughout the school year. And just one other note, for this year, the requirement was that this ATSI SPSA goes to the board for approval and is posted on the school websites. So we'll post it once the question is approved. We'll post it on the school websites. It does not have to go to the CBE, and a new round of SPSAs for the school plans for student achievement will be produced during this school year.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Also, the SPSAs that are coming again later will incorporate this stuff that they have to keep it in it.
Yeah, and part of the issue is that the SPSAs include a lot of student data, which we don't have yet, because the state will release student data in conjunction typically with the dashboard, but I'm not sure if they're going to wait as long this year. Last year they waited the last 2 years, they waited quite some time, and that's kind of thrown a wrench into our operations. But also, this data, the longer they wait, the older it is and the less relevant it is to us. So we're hoping that we receive the data a little early.
Thank you. All right, would anyone like to make a motion to
A motion to approve the school plan for student achievement. Plans for the schools identified for additional targeted support and improvement.
Thank you, Soren. Doug, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to. Sorry again. Moving on to item 15, business finance.
Thank you. Tonight we bring forward a resolution updating our board authorized signatures. We are removing CBO Bonnevert and adding Wesley Tang, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Silversmith. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-24-1 governing board authority authorized signatures? I'll make a motion. Would anyone like to second? Thank you, Sarah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and human resources. Declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 23-24 school year.
Thank you. Tonight, Human Resources is bringing forward the declaration of need. This is brought to you with 11 single subject teachers, which would mean that they are currently housed at Burlingame Intermediate School. These teachers are currently in the areas typically within our 6th grade classes. We core our math science teachers and our humanities teachers. What that means is in 6th grade, our math science teachers teach a core class, a 2-period class. So they might have, for instance, one teacher might have a chemistry degree, but she's teaching science and math. So although she meets the requirement for a science credential, she doesn't have a math credential. So we are bringing forward a declaration saying that she meets one requirement, but not the other to be able to teach the program. Or they might have a single subject English, but they don't have the social studies credential. So we are bringing these forward. Another one, a Spanish credential, the person might hold a B class, which means that they're bilingual and can teach on a multiple subject credential, a bilingual class. However, they can't teach in Spanish, but they might be teaching currently in Spanish. So this is just saying that we have a declaration of need to be able to allow these teachers to teach in these classrooms, that we are going to do a declaration of need. So we will work with the county and we will work with the teachers to be able to do this. Some of these teachers have been teaching in these classrooms for a while. We've gone through declarations of need historically in the past. We're just bringing them forward to the board again, and we will be working with the county and at the site to work through this process and make sure that we're on track, and working also with the community to make sure that we are being transparent and working through this.
Question about this. So for 6th grade, usually a multi-subject credential is all that's necessary to teach a 6th grade class, right? So if it's math, but 6th grade math, shouldn't a multiple subject credential actually suffice?
And certain, so yes, and now that we have the 6-7 math combo, that's one of the things that we're also looking at too, to the advanced math class too.
Right, so if you add the 7th grade curriculum, then it becomes a single subject territory.
Right, and then we're looking at when it's forward, that they have forward programs, that they have to be in programs a certain amount of the time. So it is a special dance that over 50% of the day the students have to be together. If they're having in that 7th grade advanced program. But yes, multiple subject, if they have a multiple subject, they can do it. However, if you have someone with a single subject, then they're doing it the 6th grade math science program. That's where we're running into it, or humanities. But yes,
So the teacher actually has a single subject, not a multi.
exactly. Exactly. So they're in the
Less
6th. I'm sorry, but
That's less typical.
yes, correct. Okay, correct. It is less typical, but that is why we're moving forward with the declaration of need for 11 components of them, 4 in English, 3 in math, 3 in social studies, and 1 in Spanish right now.
Any other questions? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to approve 16A declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 23-24 school year?
A motion to approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators for 23-24 school.
Thank you, Florence. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Doug. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dan. And 16B variable term waiver for 2023-2024 for Zachary.
Thank you. We are bringing forward a variable term waiver for Zachary Hansel, our vice principal at BIS. Zach is entering a administrative program this year. This waiver will allow him to be fully active in everything at BIS. He will be able to do all duties as an administrator at BIS with this waiver. So he will be earning his administrative credential this year while acting as the administrator in charge there. So he'll be earning his administrative credential while doing all duties under his term as the administrator vice principal. He will have it at the end of this year.
Would anyone like to make a motion regarding 16B?
I'll move to approve 16B.
Second, Thank you, Sarah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And moving along to 17. Oh, but you said all in favor. Okay. Moving on to item 17, public statements related to non-agenda items, and I do believe
We do. This was submitted via email by Arya Ascari, is a Roosevelt BIS gap. It says, good evening. I'm a parent of 3 BSD students. I'd like to make a comment about the school year calendar as concisely as possible. Could we try to align our start and end dates closer to other districts? BSD starts later in August and ends later in June than any other public school districts in the peninsula. The problem is that most camps in the first week of August because most schools start in mid-August. This leaves Burlingame's working families with 3 weeks of dead time during which they must find care options. Another undue burden is caused by ski week, parentheses, President's Week. BSD is in the minority on this one. Most school districts in the area do not take a full week off for ski week. As a result, it is difficult for working families to find care options during this week. As a compromise, perhaps we could extend the break by taking off the Friday before the holiday weekend, as some other districts do, including Hillsborough City School District. Finally, the midweek minimum day poses more challenges for working families. I suggest that we change the minimum day to Friday. It is the day when many employers allow work from home or early clock out options. Additionally, who doesn't like getting off early on Fridays? Thank you for your consideration.
thank you. Would it be possible to follow up with this family?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments?
No, there's not present. Madam.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, and moving on to item 18, board requested item. Does anyone have anything that they would like to see on future agenda? So Sarah, this is a time like going forward, if there's ever something that you're like, would like to see on an agenda, you can bring it up. Meeting, and then if we have two other folks that are in agreement that we go on to. Right. And item 19, adjournment. Would anyone like to? Make a motion? Thank you, Lauren. Is there a second?
There's
Your second. Thank you, Sarah. All in favor?
Aye.
six.
6:40.
8:40. Like that time is.
I think that the record